Betrayal isn't just about actions. It's about trust. It's about looking at someone you love and realizing they've been keeping secrets, hiding parts of their life you were never meant to see. It's about that moment when the world you built together suddenly feels like an illusion. That's what happened with Lena. That's how I found out my wife had been with my brother. It started with little things. The way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The way she laughed at his jokes just a little too much. The way his name popped up on her phone at odd hours. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid, reading too much into innocent things. But then came the excuses. "I'm meeting a friend," she'd say, grabbing her keys without looking at me. "Work ran late," she'd text, even though I knew her shift had ended hours ago. And the worst part? The way she stopped caring where I was. She used to check in, used to ask when I'd be home, used to make sure we had time together. But now, hours would pass, and she wouldn't even send a message. She was too busy with someone else. But still, I tried to push it aside, tried to believe in her, in us. Until the night I came home early. That was the moment everything changed. I stepped inside, expecting the usual sounds. TV playing, dishes in the sink, the soft clicking of her laptop keyboard. Instead, the house was silent. Too silent. Then I saw it. Her phone, sitting face up on the counter, unlocked. A message from him. "Last night was unbelievable. I can't stop thinking about you." My stomach dropped. My breath hitched. My fingers curled into fists. And then, before I could even process what I was seeing, I heard them. Upstairs. In my bedroom. My brother's voice. Her laugh. My world collapsing in real time. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering in my chest, my mind screaming at me to do something. To storm up there, to open the door, to demand answers. But I didn't. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there and listened. Listened as my wife, the woman who swore she loved me, spoke softly to another man. Listened as my brother, someone I had trusted all my life, said things that weren't meant for me to hear. And that's when it hit me. They weren't afraid. They weren't even trying to be discreet. They thought I would never notice. That I was too trusting, too unaware. And that's when the anger turned into something else. Something colder. I wasn't going to barge in there and let emotions take over. No, that would be too easy. That would give them a way out. An argument, excuses, apologies. None of that was enough. I didn't just want to leave. I wanted to make sure they lost everything. So I turned around, walked out of the house, got in my car, and I started planning. By the time I was done, they wouldn't just lose me. They would lose everything they took for granted. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet, knowing that just hours ago, my wife had been with my own brother under the same roof where we built our life together. The anger burned deep, but I didn't let it consume me. Not yet. Anger leads to mistakes. And I couldn't afford mistakes. I had a plan to create, and it needed to be perfect. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had changed. I kissed Lena on the cheek, wished her a good day, and watched as she smiled at me like she wasn't hiding the worst kind of betrayal. I felt sick, but I swallowed it down. I needed her to believe she was safe. I needed her to think I was still blind. Once she left, I picked up my phone and made my first call. "I need a favor," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Can I count on you?" There was a pause on the other end before a familiar voice answered. "Always." That was Ryan, my closest friend since college, the kind of guy who never asked unnecessary questions. When I told him what had happened, there was a long silence before he finally said, "Tell me what you need me to do." Step one was simple: gather evidence. I didn't want suspicions. I wanted undeniable proof, something they couldn't lie their way out of. Ryan had contacts, and by the end of the day, I had access to security footage from a nearby store that caught Lena and my brother meeting up, their body language far too familiar for just siblings-in-law. Then came the digital trail. I cloned her phone without her knowing, giving me access to every message, every call, every secret. The things I read made my skin crawl. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. She told him things she should have only told me. She laughed at inside jokes they had built behind my back. She called him the only one who understands her. And my brother? He responded with the same devotion. promising they'd figure out a way to be together. They had plans, long-term plans, but they didn't realize I was about to destroy all of them. Step 2. Control the finances. Lena never paid much attention to our bank accounts, trusting me to handle everything. That made it easy. I rerouted her direct deposits into a separate account, slowly draining her savings, little by little, so she wouldn't notice until it was too late. I created false transactions, setting up payments to look like extravagant purchases she never made. Soon, her accounts would be flagged. The financial strain would start before she even realized what was happening. Step 3. Make them doubt each other. If they trusted each other completely, this would be harder. But I knew how to plant seeds of suspicion. Using the access I had to her phone, I started sending messages from her number to my brother, ones that hinted at second thoughts. "I don't know if this is right," I typed. "I'm starting to feel guilty." Then I'd delete the messages before she ever saw them. My brother responded frantically, asking what she meant, why she was pulling away. The next day, I did the same thing to her, making it seem like he was the one having doubts. "I'm scared we're making a mistake," I sent from his number. "Maybe we should slow down." By the end of the week, their messages were filled with uncertainty. They started questioning each other, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the doubt turned into something deeper. Step 4. Take away her support system. I reached out to her closest friends, dropping small hints that Lena had been struggling with honesty lately, that she had been acting distant, unreliable, keeping secrets. "I think she's going through something," I told them. "I just want to be there for her, but she keeps shutting me out." It didn't take long before they started noticing the same things. A few gentle nudges, a few well-placed concerns, and suddenly, her friends weren't as available as they used to be. Slowly, carefully, I was dismantling every piece of her life. By the time she realized what was happening, there would be nothing left for her to hold on to. Lena started to notice things were off, but she didn't say anything right away. She was distracted, caught up in whatever fantasy world she and my brother had built for themselves, but doubt had started creeping in. I saw it in the way she checked her phone more often, frowning when messages took longer to come through, glancing at me like she was trying to figure out if I suspected anything. But I gave her nothing. I was patient. I waited. The best part about betrayal is that it only takes a little pressure to make the guilty unravel. It started with small things. My brother stopped replying as quickly. He sent shorter messages, less affectionate, more distant. He told her he was stressed, that things were moving too fast, that maybe they needed to slow down. But of course, he never actually said those things. I did. Using his clone number, I sent just enough to make her worry, just enough to plant the idea that maybe he wasn't as committed to her as she was to him. Then I did the same to him. I made Lena's messages sound uncertain, like she was hesitating, like she was second-guessing everything. "I feel like I'm making a mistake," I wrote. "Maybe we shouldn't rush this." I deleted the messages before she could ever see them, making sure she never realized what was happening. The doubt between them grew like a wildfire. Lena started calling him more, needing reassurance, but he wouldn't pick up as often. He started questioning if she was fully invested, wondering if she was backing out. And just like that, the cracks in their trust began to show. Then I went a step further. I made sure Lena found things she wasn't supposed to see. I left my brother's old hoodie in the back seat of her car, just enough to make her wonder if he had been careless, if someone else might have seen it. I sent a fake email to her from an unknown address, something vague but damning. "Does he really love you? Or are you just his backup plan?" She read it 3 times, staring at the screen, her fingers tightening around her phone, her face pale. I pretended not to notice. Then I made my brother question her. I had a friend send him a message from a random number, claiming to have seen Lena with someone else. "Bro, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I saw her at that cafe on 5th. She wasn't alone." He called her that night, his voice tense, demanding to know where she had been. She swore she had been home, and he believed her, but the doubt was already there. And then, I delivered the biggest blow. I made it look like she was playing both of us. Using her number, I sent myself a fake message, something that would break whatever trust remained between them. "I think Ethan is starting to figure things out. I don't know what to do. Maybe we should stop before this gets messy." Then I left my phone on the table, right in front of my brother. He saw the message before I did, his face going pale, his jaw tightening. He turned to me, his voice strained. "Ethan, what is this?" I picked up my phone, pretending to be confused, my expression shifting as I read the words. Then I looked up at him, letting silence stretch between us, watching as his mind raced, as everything he thought he knew fell apart in real time. "I don't know," I finally said, my voice low, "but I think we need to talk." My brother stared at the phone, his fingers gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. He read the message again, his jaw tightening, his breath uneven. "She sent this?" he asked, his voice low, uncertain, already starting to doubt everything. I exhaled, shaking my head slowly, running a hand through my hair like I was trying to make sense of it myself. "I don't know, man," I said, keeping my tone just right, just enough hesitation to make him believe I was as lost as he was. "But it's from her number." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, his mind racing, trying to piece together a story that made sense. He had been so sure of her, so confident in whatever twisted thing they had built behind my back, and now, in a matter of seconds, I had made him question everything. He stood up suddenly, pulling out his phone, pacing the room as he dialed her number. I watched as he ran a hand through his hair, as he pressed the phone to his ear, as he waited for her to answer. And when she finally did, I could hear the panic in her voice from across the room. "Hey," she said quickly, like she already knew something was wrong. "What's going on?" He didn't respond right away. He just stood there, staring at the floor, breathing hard, gripping his phone like it was the only thing keeping him steady. "I need to ask you something," he finally said, his voice tight. "And I need you to be honest with me." Silence. Then, softer, more careful. "Of course. What's wrong?" He let out a slow breath, closing his eyes for a second before speaking. "Are you playing both of us?" The words hung in the air like a knife, waiting to drop. I could almost hear her breath catch, the way her mind must have spun in that moment, the way she must have struggled to find the right response. "What?" she finally said, a little too fast. "What are you talking about?" He clenched his jaw. "I saw your message to Ethan." Another silence. A heavy one. Then a sharp inhale. "What message?" she demanded, her voice rising, that defensive edge creeping in. "I didn't send anything." "Then how did it come from your number?" he shot back, his voice growing more unsteady, more unsure. I watched him carefully, saw the way his hand trembled slightly as he ran it over his face, saw the way his breathing picked up, the way his mind was spiraling. "Are you messing with me?" she asked, anger seeping in now, desperation hidden beneath it. "Because this isn't funny. I never sent anything to him." He exhaled sharply, pacing again. "Then explain how it's on his phone." "I don't know," she snapped, her frustration turning to something more frantic. "I don't know, but I swear, I didn't send it." His fingers tightened around his phone, and I knew he wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to whatever trust they had left, but the doubt was there now. I had made sure of it, and once doubt takes root, it spreads like a disease. "I need to think," he muttered, pulling the phone away from his ear. She said his name, once, twice, but he ended the call, staring at the screen like it held all the answers he didn't want to see. He turned to me, his expression clouded with uncertainty, confusion, betrayal. "Man, I don't know what to think anymore." I sighed, setting my phone down, rubbing my face like this was all weighing on me too. "Look, maybe it's nothing," I said carefully. "Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Or maybe she's lying," he muttered, his grip tightening around his phone. And just like that, the first real crack between them had formed. Lena called him 5 times in a row that night. I sat in the living room, watching my brother's phone light up again and again, each time with her name flashing across the screen. He didn't answer. He just stared at it, jaw clenched, fingers gripping the armrest of the couch like he was trying to stop himself from throwing the phone across the room. "She won't stop calling," he muttered, shaking his head. "She's freaking out." I leaned back, keeping my expression neutral. "Maybe you should hear her out," I said, pretending to be reasonable, pretending like I wasn't the one who put them in this position in the first place. Maybe she has an explanation. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. That's the problem. I don't know if I even want to hear it. I stayed quiet, letting that thought sink in, letting it settle into his mind like poison. He hesitated, then grabbed his phone, finally answering. What? His voice was cold, sharp. I could hear her on the other end, her breath coming fast, her words spilling out in a panicked rush. Why aren't you answering me? I swear I didn't send that message. I don't know how it got there, but you have to believe me. He didn't say anything. Just let her talk. Let her dig herself deeper into desperation. Please, she begged, her voice breaking. You know me. I wouldn't do that to you. You know how I feel about you. He closed his eyes for a moment, like he was fighting some inner battle, and then he spoke. I thought I did. Silence. I could almost hear the air leave her lungs. She started, but he cut her off. Lena, I don't know what's real anymore. First, we're sneaking around behind Ethan's back, and now this? Now I find out you're messaging him like you regret it all? Like you're using me? That's not what happened, she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of it all. I love you. I chose you. His lips pressed into a tight line. Then why do I feel like an idiot? She made a sound like she was about to cry, and I could picture her in our bedroom, pacing the floor, running her hands through her hair, panic consuming her. Just come over, she pleaded. Let's talk about this in person. Please. He hesitated, and for a second, I thought he might actually give in. But then I saw it, the flicker of doubt in his eyes, the way his fingers tightened around his phone. I don't know, Lena. I need to think. And then he hung up. He stared at the screen for a long moment, breathing hard, before tossing his phone onto the table and rubbing his face with both hands. Man, I don't even know what to do anymore. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, keeping my voice careful, measured. Do you really trust her? He hesitated. That was all I needed. The seed had been planted. The doubt was growing. He stood up suddenly, pacing the room, running a hand through his hair. She's lying to me. I know she is. I can feel it. I stayed silent, letting him talk, letting his own paranoia do the work for me. This whole thing is messed up, he muttered, shaking his head. I should have never gotten involved with her. It's just, he exhaled sharply. I thought she actually cared about me. But now? Now, I don't even know what's real anymore. I nodded slowly, letting his own thoughts sink in, letting him believe he was the one coming to these conclusions. Maybe she's just playing us both, I said finally, watching his reaction. He stilled, his jaw tightening. Yeah, he murmured. Maybe she is. Lena kept calling, but my brother stopped answering. I watched as he ignored the buzzing phone, his expression hard, his body tense, like he was fighting the urge to give in. I could see the war in his mind, the lingering emotions battling against the doubt I had planted, the trust we had spent years building now cracking beneath the weight of suspicion. She's not going to stop, I murmured, watching the phone vibrate again and again against the table. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. She's desperate. I tilted my head slightly, feigning curiosity. Why do you think that is? He scoffed, shaking his head. Because she knows I'm onto her. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, letting his own thoughts work against him. So what are you going to do? He hesitated, staring at the phone as if the answer was hidden somewhere in the missed calls and unread messages. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me wants to just go over there, demand the truth, force her to look me in the eye and explain. And the other part? I asked, already knowing the answer. He clenched his jaw. The other part knows she'll just lie. That was all I needed. The hesitation, the doubt, the part of him that had once been so sure of her now hanging by a thread. I leaned back in my chair, watching him like a predator watches prey, waiting for the exact moment to strike. If she really loved you, I said carefully, she wouldn't need to convince you. He froze for a second, then let out a breath, nodding slowly. Yeah, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Yeah, you're right. The phone buzzed again. This time, he picked it up. I watched as he stared at the screen, his grip tightening, Then finally, he swiped to answer. What do you want, Lena? His voice was sharp, controlled, but I could hear the undercurrent of anger beneath it. I could hear her breathing on the other end, shaky, uneven, like she had been crying. Please, just let me explain. Explain what? He snapped. How you played both of us. How you lied to me while still keeping Ethan on the hook. That's not true, she cried, her voice breaking. I don't know what's happening, but you have to believe me. I never sent that message. I love you. He let out a bitter laugh. Love me? Then why does it feel like I'm just another one of your games? It's not a game, she sobbed. You mean everything to me, I swear. This is a mistake. Someone is messing with us. Who, Lena? He demanded. Who would go out of their way to ruin what we have? She fell silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, the pieces not quite fitting, the paranoia settling in. She was close. Too close. I needed to push her further. I needed her to break. You don't trust me, she whispered finally, her voice hollow. I can hear it. You've already decided I'm guilty. Because nothing makes sense anymore, he shouted. Every time I turn around, there's another lie, another reason to question everything. Then come see me, she pleaded. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't believe me. I stiffened, watching him closely. This was dangerous. If they met, if they talked, there was a chance she could convince him, a chance she could spin a story that might plant doubt in his mind. I couldn't let that happen. Don't do it, I said quietly, watching as he turned to face me. She's panicking. She's trying to control the situation. She knows she's losing you, so she wants to manipulate you face to face. His expression darkened, jaw clenching. You think? I nodded slowly. If she had nothing to hide, she wouldn't need a meeting to explain herself. He exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. I don't even know who she is anymore. Then maybe it's time to walk away, I said, my voice steady, final. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, he muttered. Maybe it is. And just like that, the last piece of trust between them shattered. Lena wasn't giving up. Even after my brother ignored her calls, even after he started pulling away, even after he told her he needed space, she kept trying. She sent messages, left voicemails, even showed up at his apartment unannounced. But he wouldn't let her in. I had made sure of that. She was slipping, unraveling, clinging to something that was already gone. And now? Now it was time to make sure she had nothing left. I waited until I knew she was home, alone, vulnerable. Then I used her phone, yes, her phone, to send a message to her boss. I quit. I can't handle this job anymore. I deleted it from her sent folder, but I knew the response would come soon enough. Then I logged into her email, sending messages to a few of her friends. Subtle, but damaging. I need space. I feel like you guys don't really support me anymore. I left just enough ambiguity to create confusion, tension, distance. And then, the final touch. I wiped her banking app from her phone, changed her passwords, and made a few large purchases under her name. By the time she checked, it would look like she had drained her own accounts. The cracks in her life had already formed. I was just making sure they spread fast enough that she couldn't fix them. The next day, I watched as it all fell apart. First, the work email. She rushed out of the bedroom in a panic, her phone clutched in her shaking hands. Ethan, she gasped, eyes wide. Something's wrong. My boss just emailed me confirming my resignation. I frowned, feigning concern. You quit? No, she snapped, scrolling through her phone. I never sent anything. I wouldn't, she trailed off, her breath coming fast, her face pale as she swiped through her sent folder, finding nothing. It's gone. The email's gone. I don't understand. I stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder, pretending to be reassuring. Maybe you forgot. Her eyes shot to mine, desperate, pleading. I didn't forget, Ethan. Someone's messing with me. Who would do that? I asked softly, watching as her mind tried to make sense of the impossible. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know, but this isn't right. Then came the banking issue. She checked her account, and I saw her expression shift from confusion to horror. No, she breathed, gripping her phone tighter. No, this isn't happening. What is it? I asked, keeping my voice even, controlled. My money, she choked out. It's gone. Thousands of dollars gone. She looked up at me, her entire body shaking. Ethan, I didn't spend this. I didn't touch this money. I exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of my neck. Maybe you should talk to the bank, I suggested. See if they can track where it went. You think I did this? She snapped, eyes wild. You think I emptied my own accounts? Quit my own job? Messaged my friends telling them I don't need them? She was spiraling, panicking, breaking. Exactly what I wanted. I stayed calm, steady. Lena, I don't know what's happening, but maybe you should talk to someone. A professional. Her breathing hitched, her lips parting, shock flashing across her face. You think I'm losing my mind. I think, I said gently, that you're going through something serious, and I just want to help. She shook her head, stepping back, her whole body vibrating with fear. No, this isn't me. Someone's doing this to me. She turned suddenly, grabbing her coat, her purse, her keys. I need to talk to your brother. I need to tell him what's happening. I blocked the door before she could reach it. I don't think that's a good idea. She blinked, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Ethan, move. I held her gaze, letting the silence stretch, letting the tension settle deep into her bones. Then I sighed, stepping aside, watching as she rushed out the door, desperate, frantic, running straight into the final trap I had set for her. Lena drove like a woman possessed. I followed at a distance, watching as she gripped the wheel with white knuckles, her entire body tense, her breathing ragged. She was unraveling faster than I expected, her world closing in on her from all sides, but she still thought she could fix this. She still thought my brother was her escape, her salvation, the one person who could make sense of the madness swallowing her whole. I smirked, because she had no idea she was driving straight into the final nail in her coffin. She pulled up to his apartment, throwing the car into park so hard I thought the engine might explode. She barely turned it off before she was out, racing up the stairs, pounding on his door like she was moments away from breaking. I leaned against my own car, far enough away to be unseen, but close enough to hear every word. My brother hesitated before answering, and when he finally opened the door, his face was twisted with frustration, exhaustion, doubt. Lena, what the hell are you doing here? She pushed past him before he could stop her, stepping inside, voice shaking. Something is happening to me. He rubbed a hand over his face, sighing. Yeah, I know. You're lying to me. Her eyes widened, and for a second, she looked like she had forgotten how to breathe. I'm not lying, she whispered, the panic in her voice cutting through the air. Someone is trying to ruin my life. He scoffed, crossing his arms. Oh, really? And I guess that fake message to Ethan just magically sent itself? I never sent that, she pleaded, stepping closer, hands trembling. I swear. I don't know how it happened, but I didn't do it. And now my job is gone. My money is gone. My friends think I abandoned them. None of this is a coincidence. Someone is doing this to me. His face hardened, his jaw clenching. And who exactly would do that, Lena? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could see it in her expression, the way her brain finally stopped working against itself. For the first time, she was seeing the pieces, the things that didn't add up, the way everything had unraveled too perfectly. Her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an answer, something to grab onto, something to ground her. And then, she found it. Ethan, she whispered, barely audible, but I heard it. My brother flinched, his eyebrows drawing together. What? She turned to him slowly, the realization sinking into her like poison, making her skin go pale, her hands fall slack at her sides. It's him, she choked out, her breath ragged. He's the one doing this to me. My brother frowned, shaking his head. That doesn't make any sense. Think about it, she said, voice trembling. Think about the timing. Think about how everything started falling apart right after he found out about us. My accounts, my job, the messages, the missing emails. The way I keep losing things. This isn't me losing my mind. It's him. He's making me think I am. My brother hesitated. For the first time, he hesitated. His confidence in my downfall was slipping, and I wasn't about to let that happen. I stepped forward, making my presence known, making sure they saw me, making sure they knew I had been listening. That's a pretty wild theory, Lena, I said smoothly, watching as she turned to me with wide, desperate eyes. But if I wanted to destroy you, don't you think I would have done it a lot faster? Her breath hitched, her lips parted, and for a second, she looked completely lost. That was the moment I knew she had no way out. You did this, she whispered, but her voice lacked the conviction, the fight, the certainty. I murmured, stepping closer, lowering my voice, that you need help. My brother exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Lena, I don't even know what to believe anymore. She turned back to him, reaching for his arm, but he stepped back. That was it. The last crack that made everything shatter. She had lost him. She had lost me. She had lost everything. And the best part? She had no proof.